So there's not one person on the face of this earth that has had to go through what I went through to make this video. Hey guys, I'm RNG Gamer. I play all my games randomly. This is Beating the Backlog, the show where I talk about the 5 games that I've beaten randomly recently. Except this time, all of these games, except for one, were selected for me to play. I selected one of them from a challenge from another video, but all the others were selected by you guys. Never in my entire life have I had to play through such a freaking gauntlet of games. Were they the hardest games I've ever played? No. But the fact that they were all at the same time and right after each other makes me really regret putting myself into this situation. So let's just dive right in and talk about the literal hell I've had to go through. First up is a game that many of you have told me was a lot harder than you were expecting, and you were right. And I only got to play this game from completing another hard challenge where I earned the right to pick it. And it was nothing like I expected. It's Control, the Ultimate Edition on the PS5. Now, for those of you who don't know, this game was made by Remedy, the same people who made Alan Wake, Max Payne, games that love to mess with your freaking mind. I did not realize that Control is a freaking open world game. You have free reign to roam around, do side missions, find collectibles, level up your character, all those sorts of things that you would find in a game like Grand Theft Auto. Just way more claustrophobic and without having an awesome radio station to keep you entertained while you're doing it. It has some slight Metroidvania elements where, as you gain new items and abilities, you can go back to previous areas and unlock other items and new routes through it that were previously inaccessible. Remedy does some of the best presentation on their games I've ever seen. They have some really memorable set pieces, and this game looks gorgeous. It plays really well, but just the world they built was so amazing. And coupled with that is this fantastic art direction and great level design. It's all incredible. But the sound design that goes along with it just blew me out of the water. You play as Jessie, who has had supernatural powers since she was a young girl. And she knows that reality isn't exactly what it seems. And she's looking for her missing brother, who was taken away by a secret government agency called the Bureau of Control. Jessie infiltrates their base and discovers that it's being invaded by a other dimensional, species, I guess, called the Hiss. And the whole game takes place in the Department of Control, which, like I said, is a huge government building with an incredible, mid-century modern design that's mixed with hyper sci-fi. It's very cool. But trust me, I've never seen anything like this in a game, and I was very impressed by what they came up with. Another interesting aspect of Remedy games is they mix in live action videos into their games. So if there's a cutscene or something, or someone talking in the game, it's usually an actor actually performing like they would be in a movie or in a theater production, and then they just superimpose it into the game. And I love that. Even with the modern technological advances that we have in facial capture and mouth movement recognition, you're still not going to capture everything that an actor does with their facial expressions. And so inserting live action stuff into the game can really add some verve and flair to it that you wouldn't find in a normal game. But you discover early on in the game that certain items out in the world hold these supernatural abilities. So something like a light switch that was found in someone's home, when they pull the light switch, it teleports them to another dimension. So the Federal Bureau of Control comes, they investigate, they take the light switch, they bring it back to their big government facility, and then they start utilizing it to help fight their fight against these supernatural entities that are all over the world. There are all these things throughout the building. They're constantly in this struggle with the Bureau itself over being in control or being let on the loose, right? So whole sections of the government building will be sealed off because a freaking refrigerator that was essentially possessed went on a rampage in there, and you've got to go stop the refrigerator. And I'm making these up because I don't want to spoil anything. Or there's an air conditioning unit that turns all of the floors into slime. Like sort of weird stuff like that. And they come up with a lot of really interesting ideas that really change up the gameplay a lot throughout the experience. And I don't really see that often in very many open world games. They're usually pretty one note. You're just kind of going from place to place and doing the same thing over and over again. And there is a little bit of that in Control, for sure. There are these timed containment missions where certain areas of the facility will get overtaken by the hiss, and you have to stop what you're doing, which I don't like doing. Of course, I don't like doing it. I'm in the middle of a cool adventure. Now I have to stop and go over here and fight a bunch of random bad guys that I fought a million times to stop the containment outbreak or whatever. You can totally ignore it, but the game is real clear about annoying you into doing it. One of the big downfalls of that also is that sometimes there will be a containment outbreak in an area of the game you haven't even unlocked yet. Like I said, it's a freaking Metroidvania. So some of these containment missions, hell, you can't even get to that part of the map yet. And they're like, you have 22 minutes to get over there. Annoying, that's so annoying. But in general, those side missions and things, after you do a certain number of them, enough to like get the upgrades you need from it, you can ignore them. You don't have to worry about it. As you start finding these like magical items, for lack of a better term, you get super overpowered. Your freaking handgun becomes a shotgun and a sniper rifle and a machine gun. You can use telekinesis to grab giant things like freaking cars and up to 3 of them at a time and hurl them at people and just one-shot almost every basic enemy in the game. You can suck the floor up off the ground and have it spin around you like a shield before having it cascade out like a freaking scatter bomb and take out a whole wall of enemies. You can even freaking levitate and semi-fly around. You become very, 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 very powerful, yet you're never so overpowered that the game ceases being challenging. And I feel like it's pretty challenging. I would die regularly in this game, and I had a lot of people in the video where I did the challenge to get to play this game tell me that they really struggled with it. And according to the trophies for beating the game, not as many people finished this game as you would think for a game that was nominated for Game of the Year. I liked the spirit of this game. I love the idea of it. I like the voice acting. I love the world. But just running around the freaking Bureau of Control building, as unique as it is, it gets kind of boring and samey after a while. You do run through the same areas over and over again. You fight the same ambushes over and over again. It gets tedious, and the combat, to me, felt really tedious. I never really got into it, and as I was running around, the combat felt like more of a deterrent from enjoying the game rather than something that built the game up. I was always trying to avoid combat to get on to the next cool story mission or the next cool side mission or finding the next cool collectible that fills in on this, extremely unique and zany world. But there are some really cool set pieces in this game. I'm not going to tell you what's going on in the footage you're seeing here, but the game is full of all kinds of really cool stuff like this that make it stand out. These unique, different little sections of the game that inject so much, difference into it. That's the best way to put it. It just subverts your expectations, and I love that. I was surprised that it was an open world game, and to tell you the truth, I wish that it had been more linear. I wish they had focused more on the story and, like I said, these set pieces in this world and this environment, rather than focusing on a bunch of like busy work and side missions and things like that, because the story is what's interesting and the world is what's interesting. Running around and doing fetch quests is not interesting. Nobody has ever thought that. It takes putting you in a unique and unfamiliar situation and it makes it familiar. And that's the big downfall of Control. There was this dichotomy there between different sections of this game. The big story missions, incredible. The in-between stuff, not so much fun. So I almost 100%ed Control. There are just a couple little trophies I missed that would have taken hours and hours and hours of grinding, but I would say I 99%ed Control. I think it was a great experience. I would highly recommend it. I would give it an 8 out of 10. It is absolutely great. You guys picked this game for me to play. It's considered to be one of the hardest games ever made. It's legendary in its difficulty. It took me 8 streaming sessions to beat this game. And when I beat it, not only did I beat it, I 1 credit cleared it. I never had to use a continue. And that game is Silver Surfer on the NES. So I'm not a big Marvel guy. I don't know a lot about the lore of Silver Surfer. He's apparently one of the strongest Marvel characters. He has the power of cosmos, whatever that means. He can basically wish like whole planets in and out of existence and crap like that, but not in this game. In this game, the main character is the weakest enemy in the entire freaking game. Even the basic enemies at the very beginning of the game are pretty much stronger than you. And the story is that you're traveling to these different worlds and you're collecting parts of some device that you have to give to Galactus, who's another, I don't know, really strong Marvel character. You're basically an errand boy. Now this game is legendary for its difficulty. It's considered to be one of the hardest games of all time. I see it on lists all over the place. Some people say it's not hard at all. Don't listen to them. They're lying to you. That is not true. While you can select the different stages at the beginning of the game, they don't work like Mega Man. You don't get anything at the end of a stage that gives you an advantage in the other stage. They're just all independently difficult. So you might as well just start with the hardest one to begin with, because at least you'll get it out of the way so you won't like waste your time like doing the easy stages only to die on the hard stage and have to start your freaking game over. This game is 15 levels long and over 40 minutes long, which is more than twice the length of a normal shoot 'em up. And while it is not white knuckle difficult from moment to moment, it requires perfection from the player the whole time. If one pixel of any part of the terrain touches any of the gigantic sprite of Silver Surfer, you're dead. If one bullet gets through, you're dead. If you do not know the position of every enemy in every section of every stage and where every single power-up is, you are done for. See, enemies will fly in off the screen with no warning. They'll just crash into you in like one frame and you're dead. You need to know where they're gonna be before they're there, so you are not there. You have to know where every power-up is in the game, because if you die one time, you lose all of your power-ups. And the game is designed for you to be fully powered up all the time to have any chance. Now, the reason I was able to beat it is I learned certain key points in the game where if I died, I knew how to recover. And that's really the only way you're gonna get through this game. You have to memorize all of it, and that's saying a lot for a game that's freaking 40 minutes long. Now, when you're fully powered up and you know what's coming, it's not that bad. So when people say, like, it's not as hard as you thought, yeah, that's because they have the whole freaking game memorized. That's like telling a third grader that freaking 12th grade isn't that bad. It's not that hard, man. I didn't find it that hard. Yeah, because you worked your way up to it. You forgot all the work that went into the next subsequent 9 years that got you to that position. Silver Surfer is like being in 12th grade and you've never been to school before. You just have to memorize everything that could possibly come up and then execute it perfectly. You cannot sight read Silver Surfer. That to me is one of the biggest characteristics of what makes a game hard versus easy. Can you just jump into a game and make progress without ever having played the game before? Even some of the hardest games of all time are designed for you to be able to beat the first level, just so you don't feel like you got cheated when you played the game the first time, right? Not Silver Surfer. This game was not designed for you to be able to beat any of it. You can't even survive 30 seconds in Silver Surfer if you haven't practiced that section before. So if you have it memorized and you know where everything is, the difficulty of Silver Surfer is probably about a 6 out of 10. But if you've never played Silver Surfer before and it's your first time, it is an 11 out of 10 difficulty. You will not succeed. I don't care how good of a gamer you are. You are not gonna just hop in there and wreck Silver Surfer. You're gonna get wrecked. It's not normal in a shoot 'em up to have a sprite the size of Silver Surfer. He is gigantic and it leaves very little room for maneuvering through obstacles or even the enemy bullets. And like I said, things are flying in from off screen all the time, like right below you, to take you out before you can react. And it is hard to react to that when you are this big. However, you can learn the game, you can mitigate all that BS involved with it. And once you do, it becomes a lot of fun. It's an above average NES game. Despite what everybody says, it really is a good game. It looks great. It has some awesome graphics and it has some really good music and some interesting level design that I've never really seen in any other NES game from that time period. Is it the hardest video game of all time, like a lot of people say? Well, it's up there. I haven't played too many games in my life that are as hard as Silver Surfer is when you need to recover or when you don't know what's coming up. Even after you've perfected it and memorized where everything is in the game, sustaining that crap for freaking 40 minutes is a real challenge. For example, like if someone just asked you a bunch of quick rapid fire questions like, what is the capital of New York? What is 3 times 12? What is your favorite movie from 1987? Just stuff that you could answer if you just had like, 10 seconds to think about that. If they did that to you constantly for 40 minutes, you would mess up. That's what this game is like. So Silver Surfer is a better game than you would think, and it just has a bad reputation. Now, is that bad reputation earned? Yes. But this game is like the bully with the heart of gold. Yes, it's very hard, but you can learn it, and the process of learning it is actually fun. So is Silver Surfer a bad game? Does it deserve all of the hate it gets? Absolutely not. Silver Surfer is a 7 out of 10, which is good. So congratulations, Silver Surfer. You made me a convert. Not to Marvel, but to this one game in specific. At the exact same time I was streaming Silver Surfer, I was also streaming this game. It's another modern game out on the PS5, considered to be hard as nails. And one of you out there, one of my viewers, selected this game for me to play. It's a game about freaking Pinocchio. Pinocchio, guys. Pinocchio. It's Lies of P. Now, I'm just going to say this. I need you to listen. Those of you that are already fans of this game and you're just watching this review to like bolster your love of Lives of P. I liked Lives of P, okay? But my experience with this game is going to be different than most people in the world. I live streamed this game once a week for 3 months, okay? I didn't have any opportunities outside of that to experiment. I took advice from the chat, who is full of trolls, okay? But they're the ones that gave me the advice on builds and strategies. I got conflicting info from different people. It's just what you do when you stream, okay? So my experience with this is not going to be super normal, but I'm trying to be fair. I will say this is the best Souls-like that I've ever played that is not made by FromSoft. It borrows and it steals all its mechanics from FromSoft and from Dark Souls, like the bonfires, which they call stargazers in this game, and freaking souls, which they call ergo, and it has similar leveling mechanics and build archetypes, and it takes blocking mechanics from Bloodborne and the parry system from Sekiro. I think that's what people told me, but I don't know because I haven't played Sekiro. It does it well, okay? And it can easily pass for a Souls game. And it adds in some other stuff to spice up things like a skill tree, freaking robot arms, an emphasis on throwables, but it is a Souls game at heart, with some variations that I'll get to a little bit later. As for the presentation of this game, it is incredible. Okay, guys, the symphonic score is unbelievable. It is way, 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 way better than I expected. The orchestration is phenomenal. The motifs I heard running through them, because it doesn't really have melody, right? It has motifs that you recognize. Fantastic. I loved the music in this game. And it looks great, and the graphics are absolutely stunning. There are incredible environments, some really cool set pieces, decent to great NPCs. Some of the voice actors were like 10 out of 10. Some of them were like 4 out of 10, like freaking Jiminy Cricket. Yes, Jiminy Cricket is in this game. He's like a robot lantern that hangs from your freaking belt or something. I don't know. I never quite figured it out. And like I said, you're playing as Pinocchio. All right, that's what the P in Lies of P stands for. Now, I've never read the novel, so I don't know if it really is about a steampunk odyssey in a dystopian world full of flipping monsters and alchemists trying to turn everyone into other stone monsters, while men and robots with handlebar mustaches tried to sell me new-fashioned peanut brittle. I also don't know if that's what the game is about either, but it's something like that. It's a lot like a Souls game where the plot is understated and you get your context clues from the item descriptions and the environment around you. This is built the same way, but it's really hard to keep up with that crap while you're streaming. Geppetto's there and you're trying to turn into a real boy by lying your ass off and killing everything in sight. And there's a mechanic in the game where at certain points you have the choice of telling the truth or lying, and I just lied like all the way through because I thought it'd be funny. That probably led towards me getting the bad ending, I don't know. Now, the inspiration for this game was taken from FromSoft's other games, right? I'm not faulting Liza P for that, because if you're gonna steal from someone, steal from the best, right? I'm also not faulting my experience with the lore of this game, because that's my issue, streaming it, of course. It made it difficult to keep up with what was going on in the game. But I am gonna talk to you about some flaws or changes with the gameplay that I don't like. You may actually even like these changes in the soul system, but I personally didn't really jive with them. The first thing that bugged me about the combat in Liza P is that you can't cancel out of an attack by rolling. In most Souls games, if you go swinging and the enemy comes to attack you, you can roll and it will cancel you out of your attack. That does not happen in this game. Once you hit the button to swing, you are committed. That animation will play out come hell or high water. There's also attack stacking and buffering. So when I play a Souls game and I go up to hit an enemy, and let's say my light swing is R1, I will just hit like R1, 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 just like tap it as fast as I can, and the game will only register the second swing if I press R1 after the first one. So I'm pressing it really quickly, hoping to hit that second swing as soon after the first animation ends as possible. Liza P doesn't do that. It buffers them. So if you hit swing, 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 the game like just stacks those 3 commands in a row and you can't cancel out of them. And that leaves a lot of opportunity for your enemies to hit you. Now that's my fault. I could have gotten over that and learned to do it better, and I kind of did towards the end of the game. But it took a lot of muscle memory breaking to get over that. In Souls-likes, there's a mechanic called poise, where it's an invisible stat where if you do enough damage to an enemy, it will cancel them out of their attack and like stagger them. I feel like the bosses in Liza P had so much poise. Even though I was using like the biggest, strongest weapon in the game, the poise breaker essentially, they would just attack straight through my attacks. You sucker punched me in the middle of physically being cut. And that happens constantly in this game. And what drives me crazy is that every enemy attack cancels your attack. So you can really only attack when the coast is completely clear. And I don't like that. Now I know some people are gonna love that. It's a way more tactical way to play than the way I usually play a Souls game, which is just to like turtle up and get as strong as I possibly can and just tank everything. You can't do that in Liza P. It plays more like Bloodborne. You gotta freaking get in there and you gotta parry. And that's what this game is about. It's about parrying the enemy attacks and counterattacking. And once I figured that out, I really got into the combat of this a lot more. Now you may say, well, you just had a skill issue. Yeah, obviously. I didn't have any skills playing the game. I'd never played it before. If you played through the game 9 times, you're probably really good at it, okay? I played through it once. I did it on a stream over the course of 3 freaking months. Every week I was rusty coming back to it because I was playing all these other games in the middle of playing Liza P. So like I said, my experience with it was a little bit different. Another problem I had with the game outside of this was the level design. It is not nearly as good as the Souls games. The stages are pretty much linear. It feels almost like you're playing through stages in a retro game, like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, their own little compartmented experiences. And they're very straightforward and predictable. There were many times that I was like, this bridge is gonna collapse when I walk across it, or there's gonna be a guy around that corner. And that's just part of getting good, as they say, with a Souls game. Like, you learn how to predict this to mitigate your chances of getting absolutely manhandled. The levels, they don't loop back on themselves very much like they do in Souls games. It's not like Dark Souls, where you start at like the top of an area and you just descend before hopping on an elevator and it just takes you back to an area and you're like, holy crap, that's what was up here? I had no idea that this elevator came back to this cliff above the starting area. And those sort of like interesting experiences with the level design in Dark Souls were pretty absent from Lies of P. And also one of my big complaints is that while the bosses are just as challenging as the Souls games, the general making your way through the levels in Lies of P isn't that difficult. There were only a handful of times I died in the entire game just exploring around or making my way to the boss. It felt like the difficulty there was a lot lower than a Souls game. So I wasn't expecting that either. I mean, it was a breath of fresh air not for it to be so challenging, but it did make the game a little less tense and a little bit more boring, honestly. Not to say that Lies of P is boring, but it didn't feel like that real tense fear that you get when you're playing a Souls game where you have that constant nagging that like something might jump out and ambush you at any second and you're gonna die and you're gonna lose all this progress and you struggled so hard to just make it this far, and can I just make it to the next bonfire? Can I please just make it? This isn't like that. I just like cut my way through everything and then would just get stuck on the various bosses. Speaking of which, the boss design in this game is really good. I was surprised by that, but it is not balanced. And it may be a skill thing between multiple people, but about half the bosses I beat on like my first or second try, no problem. And then some of the ones that everybody said were super easy, like the Black Rabbit freaking Brotherhood fights, I got stuck on those like for 30 times. It was a huge struggle. And everybody's like, I got it on my first try. I don't know why I couldn't. Something about fighting multiple enemies at once just like rattled my brain. I don't know, maybe I'm just a bad multitasker. I don't know. But I struggle with those. And then other people that I know are really good at Souls games were like, I was stuck on this boss for 2 weeks and I like knocked it out on my first try and barely got hit. Who knows? Maybe this game is, the bosses are suited to different play styles. Maybe that's what it is. Your build is not necessarily feasible for every boss fight. Maybe it wants you to experiment. And maybe that's the reason I struggle with some of the boss fights, is because I didn't really have time to experiment on camera. My problem, not yours. Do not play Lies of P the way I did. If you've never played it before, and you're not a regular like daily live streamer, do not live stream this game for a couple of hours once a week over the course of several months. I was very burned out on it by the end, and it wasn't the game's fault. It was my fault. I ruined my own experience with the game. Not to say that I ruined it. I did enjoy it. If you think Lies of P is a 10 out of 10 game, you're right. If you think Lies of P is a 4 out of 10 game, you're also right. This game is very dependent on your personal experience with it. My personal experience with it, it was about a 7 out of 10. Very close to an 8 though. This next game was donated to the channel by another great YouTube channel called Retro Rivals. I did a video on this game way back when I started this channel talking about how it was the rarest PS4 game you've never heard of. Thank you Retro Rivals for donating the game. It came with a gold star, meaning they picked it for me to play. So let's talk about Pineview Drive. This game was only released in certain Walmarts in certain provinces of Canada. It's a North American release, but it's a Walmart Canadian exclusive. And it is super hard to find down here. You rarely, if ever, even find copies on eBay. The Retro Rivals found a copy of it for me, knowing I was looking for it, and they mailed it down here to me. So I was happy to play it and review it for them. Thank you so much, guys. So where do I even get started with Pineview Drive? It's not very good. You know those times in games where you're just like wandering around trying to get an event to trigger? Like in an RPG where the guy won't unblock the gate until you talk to every person in the town, but you don't know to do that. You just like keep trying stuff till something happens. Or like you look up a walkthrough and it's like, just talk to this person at 10 p.m. and like the person never shows up and you're like, oh, well, you didn't complete this other mission, you know, earlier in the game and the walkthrough never referenced that because they happened to do it when they wrote the walkthrough. That sort of stuff, and you're just like, I don't know what to do and what's happening. Well, this is a whole game based around that. So you're exploring an old house where no one has survived more than 30 days. And I guess you used to live in the house, but you're basically there to investigate to find out what happened to your wife. And they never really fully explain what's going up. They just chalk it up to like bad crap happened there. So the gameplay in this game is I don't know. It's a mixture of a walking simulator and an adventure game. You wander around in the dark and you look for batteries, flashlights, matches, and basically keys. And you're trying essentially to find all the keys to unlock tons of doors that are in this mansion. But in each given day, and like I said, you're trying to survive 30 days in this thing to beat the game. Only certain keys to certain doors are available on certain days. So you're like kind of aimlessly trying every door till you find the one that the key you happen to find works on. And you rinse and repeat this until you find a letter hidden inside the house, and that advances the day. Now, there's not really much of a sense of danger. There's not really any monsters tracking you, but there's this weird damage mechanic where the game will do a jump scare. And if you shake your controller or like rattle your analog stick when the game jump scares you, like it's like gotcha, and that's how you take damage. And that's more suited to using a mouse, I think, than an analog stick. Because I'm using an analog stick, my hand's not like resting on the analog stick with enough pressure to move it. But if you're using a mouse, you know, and something scares you, you would definitely, you know, jitter the mouse and take damage. In principle, I like that idea, but there's a problem. Since this is a walking simulator, you're just always moving and looking around all the time. You're not standing still at any given point. So when the jump scare happens, you just automatically take damage because you're already moving when it happens. It's like someone in the dark is holding out a fist and you just walk into it, essentially. Like you don't even know it's there, it's gonna happen. And a lot of these keys you have to find can only be found by triggering like esoteric crap. So the gameplay loop is you start off in your bedroom and like I would always just run down the stairs and just go on the first door on the left and just like make loops going into every room till I found one where like there was a key or something, and then I would start back over and check every door that was still locked. But some of the freaking events won't happen till a certain time period. So you get up at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you go downstairs, you go through the first like, you know, 25 rooms, nothing happens. And then you just wander around, nothing ever happens, never happens. You make the whole loop. And then you go back in the first room you went into originally and there's a key there. And you're like, why the crap? Did I miss it the first time? No, see, the event doesn't happen until 1 a.m. in the morning. And you happen to go into that room at like 7 p.m. and the event hadn't happened yet. So not only are you just wandering aimlessly, you have to like double check every room at different time periods, and that's super freaking irritating. At points I got stuck and I looked up a walkthrough and it's like, go out in the backyard and stand by this scarecrow until, you know, something happens, and you'd stand there like 10 minutes and nothing would happen. And it's like, it should trigger at like 2 a.m. and 2 a.m. would pass and nothing would happen. Oh, it didn't happen because you have to like be walking out of the back door of the house between 12 and 2 a.m. And then that will cause a trigger that will cause the scarecrow to then start his countdown to do his thing. But this is not explained anywhere, right? So you're just walking around hoping crap happens. But the thing I hate more than that about this game is that this game runs at one of the choppiest frame rates I have ever seen. I'm talking between 8 and 15 frames per second, and it gives me motion sickness. I've only gotten motion sickness like 3 times in my entire life, and one of them is from playing this game. And it's not a VR game, it's just a normal game. So my suggestion is to play this game in the dark with the brightness turned up all the way and lower the camera sensitivity all the way down. That made it manageable, but I could still only play it in like little 20-minute increments, which ended up being a big problem for the day 30, which completely changes the gameplay. It takes place in a different location with different mechanics, and it's actually very tense and very stressful. I feel like if the rest of the game had been like the last day of the game, it would have been much better and way better received. But unfortunately, that's not what we got. And I'd be willing to put up with all this stuff if the story was great, but really the story isn't that great. It's just like you find the piece of paper and the dude reads it and he's like, On this day, we sat by the beach and looked at the ships rolling in. It was a magical day, and I'll never forget it. And it's like, bum, bum, day 17. And you get up and like wander around again, and you get to the end of that day and you read the letter, and it's like, on this day, I went into town and I bought my wife flowers. I placed them on the dining room table, and she told me she loved me. Bum, bum, day 18. And you're like, okay, cool. Happy about that. And at the end, there's supposed to be some big twist reveal, but there's not. I mean, you can extrapolate what you think was going on and make it, you know, turn out any way you want. Were you the killer? Was your wife the killer? Did she kill herself? Did you or did you not have a kid? Did you or did you not live in the house? It's just so ambiguous, there's no way to know. Bad story, bad gameplay mechanics, bad performance that physically makes me ill. Pineview Drive is a truly god-awful, terrible, but very expensive PlayStation 4 game. How good was it? It's a freaking 3 out of 10. It is awful. It is actually painful to play. I would advise you, if you're looking for it, it's not worth it. Thank you, Retro Rivals, for sending it to me. I loved the experience, and they played it along with me. I don't know what their experience was with the game. I don't imagine it was great. Well, like I said, there was only one game in this video that was randomly selected for me to play. Let's see it get randomly selected right now. Let's shuffle it up. We have 152 entries. Let's see what we get. Maybe it'll be something good. Come on, something good, please. What do we got? What do we got? What do we got? What is this? What is this? What is this? Slime Son. So Slime Son is a teeth-gritting, nightmare difficulty platformer like Super Meat Boy, The End Is Nigh, or Celeste, and its most prominent characteristic is its art style with like a very, very zoomed out view, this lime green with red accents and like a dark blue background. It's very striking, but it gets old quickly and it is harsh on your eyes. Let me tell you, if you're sitting at like your computer desk playing this from a foot away, your eyes are going to be scorching and you're going to have a raging headache from just the sheer amount of light bouncing back into your retinas. I really wish that the game changed the color palette throughout the different levels, but it doesn't. There are like some filters you can unlock as collectibles throughout the game. You know, they stay the same too unless you manually change them. I think if the game cycled through the different filters or like each stage had a different color theme, it would have really helped with the eye strain on this experience. The music in this game, and you can't hear it like I said because I don't want to get copyright claimed on this, but the music's unbelievably good. It's all chip tunes and it's super whimsical and zany and it suits the overall aesthetic of this perfectly. Take my word for it, you would love the music. It hangs in there with some of the best like 8-bit games you've ever heard. Now the story of this, and I guess there is a story, is that Slime Son, who's the main character, and his family were, I guess, eaten by a giant worm, and you have to work your way back out from like its butthole all the way to its mouth. And along the way, you meet like this zany cast of characters that have also been swallowed in the past. They've taken up residence in the guts of this giant worm. But this game doesn't survive on its aesthetics or its art style or its music. Games like this rely on their gameplay. And let me tell you something. I compared Slime Son to a bunch of great games before, right? Super Meat Boy, Celeste. Compared to those games, as far as I know, now I haven't played Celeste, but I played a ton of Super Meat Boy. Slime Son just has a ton of freaking mechanics. And it has a constant timer that runs the whole time. There's a time limit on every level, and if you don't go fast enough, this lava comes up and just eradicates you. There's a freaking squirrely dash that you can do. And there's a slow-mo button that you use, and it also causes certain objects to phase in or phase out. So it's like a polarity system. So like when you're going slow, you can only jump on objects that are going green, or you let off the slow-mo, the objects that are green turn to red and then they'll kill you, and you're trying to manage that all the time because it's tied to the slow-mo button. Like your momentum changes, so it's like the game's speeding up and slowing down while you're also trying to keep track of these switches flipping left and right. It's just a lot. Like I said, there's switches, there's freaking keys, there's enemies that chase you, there are springboards that sometimes will work if you're going in slow-mo and sometimes they won't, and there's Donkey Kong style barrels, and there's a whole heap of this crap to keep up with. And it's not just about like running and jumping and being precise. The times in the game where you do that and you just run and jump and you're precise landing on platforms, it plays great. But all this other puzzle crap that's built on top of it is just super overwhelming. And the game is at it, like I said, it's most fun when it keeps it simple. And the physical mechanics of playing the game are annoying. Holding down the slow-mo button while playing is tiring, and the dash is awkward and feels loose. You'll often dash in the wrong freaking direction, and I couldn't figure that out while I would be like pressing down and I would dash to the right. And let me explain to you why I was having these issues. This is the Switch Pro controller, right? Everybody's seen this. This D-pad right here, while it feels kind of okay, it's relatively clicky, its fulcrum that it sits on is really bad. So if you press down, you can pivot like this. If I press this way, it presses to the right, down and right. If I press this way, it presses down and left. If I press over here and up, it will press up and right. You can actually pitch the freaking D-pad up and down, so the directions are not isolated. So you'd be like white knuckling through a level and you're going real hard and you press right dash and it's like, oh, we pressed right at the bottom right corner of this, so you dash down. Super freaking irritating, especially with a timer going all the time. This game is broken into 100 stages, and each of them have like between 3 and 5 sub-levels. And you have to beat all the sub-levels in one go to save your freaking game. There were times where I was like, I've just got one more level, honey. I'll be up for dinner in just a second. Let me just finish this level to save my game. And I'd spent like 30 minutes trying to beat this one sub-level, and I beat it, and then I have to go to another sub-level. And I have to beat like 2 more sub-levels before I can save my game. So I put my freaking Switch into sleep mode, and my daughter would come by and take my game out and try to play Minecraft. And I'd have to replay all those sub-levels again. That's like 400 to 500 individual levels in this game. And it takes like 12 to 15 freaking hours. That's way too long for a game like this. That's way too long. And that's just the base game. That's not getting all the collectibles, which in this game are apples, or doing the extra freaking content. Now, there are different characters to unlock that can help you out by suiting your play style better. But no matter what you pick, there's one mechanic in Slime that sets it apart from any other platformer like it I've ever played. You know how in Mario, there are different heights of the jump you can do? If you just tap the jump button, you'll jump a small amount, but if you hold it down, you'll jump more? That doesn't work that way in Slime. If you touch the jump button, you always jump to the exact same height. There's no short jump, there's no long jump, there's no high jump. All jumps are equal. I would work my way through some hard section, I'd finally make it through to just have some simple platform that I needed to jump across, and I would hit the jump button real softly trying to jump across it, and I would hit the spikes on the ceiling. You're like, oh, that's right, you can't low jump, you can only high jump. That's really hard to get over. When you're under pressure all the time and you're constantly being chased by this lava and dealing with all this other crap, those old habits die hard, I'm telling you. I think any person my age that's played platformers their whole life would struggle with this mechanic. Still, I was able to beat the game. I beat the 400 or 500 levels, whatever it was. I even streamed the end of me beating it online on YouTube and finished the last boss, which took a while, but I did it. And I was so happy when I finished the game. It super overstayed its welcome. The difficulty in gameplay is up there with the greats like Super Meat Boy and Celeste, or so I think. But it just isn't that fun. When I beat a stage in Slime, it wasn't this like sense of accomplishment that I usually get when I beat a stage in a game. It was more like a, thank God that's over, like feeling. And I don't want to feel that way when I play a game. That being said, Slime is not a bad game. It was fun. It was just bloated for what it was, and its mechanics were a little hard to get used to and not that like engaging to me. It was very nitpicky. That's how I want to put it. Slime Sign is a nitpicky platformer. It definitely wants you to play through every stage the way it specifically intends you to do it. Take the exact route. Decent game, it's good. It's a 6 out of 10. If you make it this far, I really appreciate you. Do that for me. Subscribe to the channel if you like the content and I earned your subscription. Leave a comment and give me a like. That's the best way to help me with the YouTube algorithm. You can see the Patreon supporters and the channel members on the screen right now. If you'd like to help out the channel, you can go to the link in the description down below and follow me on Patreon. Support me here as a channel member. Thank you so much, guys. Hope you liked the video. I know it's been a while since I've done one of these, but it's been a busy summer. Appreciate every one of you. I'll catch you guys next time.